So commercial real estate can be very intimidating, and most people jump right into residential where they spend years of their life dealing with tenants, toilets, and all kinds of problems. In this video, I'm going to explain how commercial real estate is actually much easier than you think, and you can just skip residential and jump right into commercial real estate. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about what I think to be the easiest asset class for a beginner to get started in. So if you're new here, my name's Graham Story. I've been in commercial real estate for about 8 years as a broker. I just started investing in buildings about 1.5 years ago. I've bought 9 buildings with my business partner and a couple other partners, and we're just getting started. I have a podcast where I talk all about this kind of stuff. I'll link that here. Let's get into it. So if you've been watching this channel for a little while, you're not going to be surprised when I say what I think is the easiest asset class for beginners to get into is industrial real estate. Hey guys, real quick, I hope you're enjoying this video. If you're interested in seeing how I made over $100,000 in my first commercial deal in less than a year, I put together a free guide in the description below. Just sign up for the email and I'll send it right over. Make sure you check your spam folder because sometimes it'll end up there. Now back to the video. So here are the 3 reasons why I think industrial real estate is one of the best asset classes for beginners. Reason number 1, triple net leases. With triple net, the tenant is responsible for the taxes, the insurance, and the common area maintenance or maintenance depending on if it's a single tenant or multi-tenant building. The landlord is typically only responsible for the roof and the structure of the building. So as long as you make sure those things are in good working order when you deliver the building, then you're very likely to have a low hassle property. Additionally, tenants typically like to sign a 3 to 5 year lease term, so you're not worried about turning over every single year, going in and fixing up the property. You're going to have a fixed income stream for 3 to 5 years where you don't have to do too much but just sit back, collect rent, make sure everything's good with the building, and it just makes for a much easier process. Reason number 2, there's just so many fewer moving parts in industrial. I've mentioned several times that industrial is just simple. Most of the time the building's going to be constructed of metal, maybe some masonry like brick or concrete. Outside of that, you might have a couple loading docks, maybe a drive-in door, the HVAC system, the plumbing and electrical, and the roof. But it's far less complicated than something like a multifamily building or a retail building. I started in industrial real estate because me and my business partner don't have loads of cash sitting around. And I suspect you might not either. In industrial, you don't have to have a ton of capital up front versus something like a retail building. If you have a retail building, when you go to lease out your space, typically a business owner or a tenant is going to expect you to do the build out or do a tenant upfit, and they'll ask you for tenant upfit allowance. What this means is, let's just say there's a coffee shop and they want to come there, they want to build out a cool little bar, they want to paint the walls and put up some wall decorations. Well, they're going to expect you as the landlord to be responsible for that. So in order to get the tenant and secure them, you're going to have to pay $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to upfit their space. And yes, it's worth the investment because if the tenant's paying you more rent, then your property's worth more money. But it's just not something that's super accessible and easy for someone new to get into like industrial. Granted, everything is negotiable, so it's not like that's the only way you can do retail. I know people who will give free rent in exchange for the upfit time period, but most of the time the tenant's going to expect you to pay for it. And like I said, in industrial, there's not really any upfit. It's just concrete floors, steel walls, making sure everything's a good working order, and the tenant comes and takes the space over and they're ready to go. So reason number 3 is financing. In our experience, if you're buying an industrial building that's under 25,000 square feet, typically you're buying from a business owner or a mom and pop. Picture an older person who's had their business for 15, 20 years. They're starting to wind down. They'd like to retire. Maybe they want to sell their business and they bought their real estate a long time ago and they'd like to sell their real estate with the business. Because of this, they probably bought their building at a much lower price a long time ago. It's appreciated over time. And if they were to go to sell, they're going to have a very large tax burden. That's where you need to master seller financing. If you can master seller financing and why it is actually good for a seller, it can truly be a win-win for somebody. That's what we did. We got very good at pitching seller financing and why it is truly a win-win for somebody who wants to mitigate or avoid. It's truly good for somebody who wants to mitigate their tax burden and prolong it over time. I plan on making a full breakdown video about seller financing, everything I've learned about it, so stay tuned for that one. So seller financing helps people get into deals because it's not a traditional bank where they're going to check your credit, they're going to see how much liquidity you have, they're going to look at your track record, they're going to look at literally everything. A seller typically is not going to look at any of that stuff. They're just going to base their underwriting off of their building. They're familiar with their building. They know it does well. They know it can be rented out. And heaven forbid, if you were to stop paying them, they're just going to get their building back. And with seller financing, you can often get in much lighter. So typically, if you go to a bank, you're going to expect to put down 20 to maybe 25%, maybe even 30, depending on the deal. But with all of our seller financing buildings, I think all but one of them, we've been able to get them for 10% down. And I know you might think, oh, if you buy $1 million building, that's $100,000. However, if you go buy $1 million building and all you got to do is bring $100,000, it might sound like a lot of money to you now. It did when I first started, but you can go out and if it's a good deal, you can raise $100,000 much easier than you think. Overall, seller financing on these buildings is just a much easier process than going through the bank, and it can provide so much flexibility for a beginner. I will add a caveat that you definitely should consult with an attorney on the proper documents or somebody who's actually done seller financing before. Don't go out and try this on your own. Get advice from somebody and help from somebody because you can burn yourself. You have to make sure you do it correctly. So hopefully these 3 reasons give you some insight into commercial real estate and some hope that you can just get started right in commercial. You don't have have to go to residential. You don't have to waste years of your life dealing with tenants, turnovers, headaches, all kinds of stuff. Commercial real estate is not easy, but it's not rocket science. It just takes hard work and patience. So find yourself a good mentor, surround yourself with people who are actually doing deals, and start taking action. Before you know it, you're going to have your first building. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.